Hello, this is Mayor Chris Bollwage, and welcome to another edition of Our City. First, a few things going around the city of Elizabeth and the county of Union. Keep in mind that we both, the city and the county, have plenty of vaccines available. Residents can visit ucnj.org/vax or ucnjvaccine.org. Click on Union County, Peterstown Community Center, or the Dunn Sports Center, or Kane University, or just simply, if you want a vaccine, just call 908-820-4250 and we will make arrangements. COVID-19 testing is also available weekly. Peterstown on Tuesdays from 1 to 7, Thursdays 9 a.m. to 2:30. The Sampson Center is open Wednesdays 5 to 8, Saturdays 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. The Dunn Center is open on Thursdays from 4 to 7, and the hours at Kane University vary. So whether you want to get tested, whether you want the vaccine, we can make that available. You do not need an appointment any longer. Walk-ins are available. Masks are required. Please, no food, drink, or smoking or chewing gum 30 minutes prior. A photo ID is required, and anyone under the age of 18 must be accompanied by an adult. As always, insurance is not needed or required, but if you have coverage, please bring a copy of any insurance card. And any children will need a birth certificate or a parent or a guardian to sign on. And just a note, currently the city of Elizabeth is at 85% of our community that has received at least one shot. And it's between 12 and 17 years of age, we are up to 74% of our community that has just received at least one shot. We are doing good. We just need to get better. And FEMA, for those of you that are suffering from Hurricane Ida, the last day to file a claim is Thursday, November 4th. Keep in mind, Thursday, November 4th, 2021 is the last day to file a FEMA claim. Now, there's plenty of ways you can do it, but keep in mind you should file with your own insurance. If you don't have insurance, then you should file with FEMA. You should do both simultaneously with either your homeowners, your renters, and FEMA at the same time. You can call FEMA at 1-800-621-3362, 1-800-621-3362, or you can go online, disasterassistance@fema.gov. That's disasterassistance@fema.gov. You can use the FEMA app on your smartphone. Or real easy, you could just get in a car or walk to 618 Salem Avenue in Elizabeth, the old Donald Dempsey Center, where FEMA is open 7 days a week. It is very important that we get vaccinated. Keep in mind, while our numbers are good, they're staying low. We're averaging 30, 40 cases a day. That's still up from 5 and 7 cases a day in early January. If you cannot socially distance, then wear a mask. Wash your hands as frequently as possible. If you need any information, you can reach us on our social media sites or call our public information office at 908-820-4124. Now, keep in mind, our schools opened 2 weeks ago, and the school board has been doing an excellent job in working with Superintendent Olga Ugemeyer, the executive board of the administration of the schools, and I'm pleased to be joined on this week's show by the school board president, Mr. Jerry Jacobs. Jerry, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Mayor, for having me. Really appreciate the opportunity, sir.
Well, Jerry, how long have you been on the school board now? Tell us about, your getting there and how long you've been there and what it's been like before we start talking about your role as president.
So this is my 4th year as a school board member. I ran for school board in 2017 because I wanted to have an opportunity to give back more to our children and to our community. And I saw that this was the next progression as I was a president of Elizabethport Little League for over 10 years, very involved with our community down there in the First Ward and our children all over the city. And I realized that the next progression would be for me to be able to be involved with the schools to have more impact on more of our children and for them to be able to succeed.
And Jerry, this year you the presidency in a year like no other. You started the presidency in January of 2021 after the first 9 months of COVID. Tell us what that was like, because when you started as school board president, there were no kids in school.
That's right, Mayor. And that was one of my biggest goals as coming in on this year, was to try to get our children back to school safely. And we were able to start a staggered scheduled return in the late spring and bring back all of our children to schools back then. We just recently had a successful reopening of our schools, even though we had to go through Hurricane Ida and delay that. But we had a successful reopening, and I'm so happy that our children are back in school, because we know the conditions that we had to go through with virtual learning during the pandemic. We made the best of it, but teaching and learning has always been an in-person experience. So to see our children back in school is definitely something that I am so happy for, and along with my colleagues. This is something that we really worked very hard with last year and trying to get it done with President Barbosa, and then continuing to make this happen for all of our children, because all of my colleagues and I have a vested interest in all of our children.
So, Jerry, I remember having many conversations with you when you assumed the presidency in February and March of this year about trying to get kids back in before the end of June. And you and the board were successful in getting some schools, or all schools, at least some who wanted to come to class, open last May. Tell us about that difficult time.
So I think that was actually beneficial to us to make sure that we could safely reopen our schools. We know at that time some parents, and I can understand as well, still had their apprehension about returning their child to schools. So we did have a reduced capacity at that point. But now that makes up, but us going through that experience gave us the knowledge and the techniques that we needed to have a successful reopening in September. And that's something we really needed, because when we're looking at the size of our district, which is growing by leaps and bounds, and we're over 30,000 students at this point, a successful reopening in the spring definitely helped us here in the fall.
We had many conversations about that in March and April last year, you and I, about what you just said. It was your position back then. I strongly agreed that if there was any way to get some students back in May and June, it would make September that much easier. Have you seen that to be a reality?
Yes, I have, Mayor. On the first day of school, I had the opportunity to be joined by some of my colleagues, Commissioner Ileana Chevres, Commissioner Diane Barbosa, and Commissioner Charlene Bathelis. And let me tell you, our kids were so excited. They were so excited to be back in school. So, many people think that, being on the board of ed is a great thing, and this, that, and that, and it is. However, we spend a lot of time in meetings after meetings with the administration, Madam Superintendent Olga Hugelmeyer, her executive board, the staff and the administration and the teachers, and trying to successfully plan this reopening, which was a great thing. We then got hit with a challenge on this reopening when we had to experience the unprecedented damage from Hurricane Ida that you had mentioned just before. And, our schools, and trust and believe, I had visited the schools in August, and our schools were ready to reopen before Hurricane Ida came. But once Hurricane Ida came, there were so many of our schools that were damaged. And as I toured these schools in the damage, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And it made you realize, hey, this is just another thing. But with the great work of our Madam Superintendent, Olga Hugelmeyer, along with her outstanding team, along with the custodians, the staff. I mean, I can go on and name how many people were involved in getting our schools back online, in the time frame that we had to get it done. As you know, Mayor, two of our schools, schools 26 and schools 27, both of them that serve over 700 students, are currently inoperable at this point in time. We're looking to get those schools back as soon as possible, but that was one of the other challenges that we had to deal with at that time.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, that was my follow-up question, Jerry. I know some of the electrical panels were severely damaged during the hurricane on those two schools. And the initial projection was about 2 months, sometime at the end of October or early November, when those schools would be back in person. Have you been briefed, or are you aware of the progress on those two schools? And will one open sooner than the other?
From our latest briefing, I think you have the same information that I have, Mayor. We're looking at approximately 2 months, hopefully sooner. The sooner the better. We are trying to house our, we recently acquired the St. Benedictine property over on North Broad Street, and we're looking to put our special needs children, who are most at-risk children, okay, for schools 26 and 27 in that facility, sometime hopefully mid-October. We're also including our port of entry students from those schools to be able to come to that school as well. It's
definitely Jerry, you mentioned port of entry. I think it's important to explain that because the International Rescue Committee is located in Elizabeth, any relocation or resettlement of refugees, if they come through that site, whether they live in this area or a surrounding community, they have to go to school in Elizabeth, which is one of the reasons I asked them to hold off until we can get through the hurricane.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I do recall that. We do appreciate that, Mayor, because of the fact, as I mentioned, we had over 1,500 new students register over the summer. And combined with the numbers that we have in our class, it is struggling. But that also says something else too that I want to point out. I think that says that the job that the administration, along with Madam Superintendent and Mr. Kennedy, along with my colleagues on this Board of Commission, of the job that we're trying to do and making sure that Elizabeth Public Schools is the best public schools in the state of New Jersey. We are seeing a huge influx of residents and children to our community because our schools are known for being one of the best, especially our high schools, especially our magnet schools. So yes, that is a point where we have realized that many refugees have settled in our area because of the fact that we are a welcoming community.
Jerry, tell us about COVID-19. A lot of parents are still skeptical, and rightfully so, as I am and you are every day, that COVID-19 can still infect a person or a family. There's constant testing going on and vaccines. The school board has done a remarkable job on air purification and windows and classroom activity and getting kids outside instead of sitting in the gym. Tell us about your efforts and the board's efforts to make it as safe as possible, because we can't prevent every single spread of the vaccine, but we sure can minimize it.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So as you stated, and which is so most important, all children, staff, and employees should be wearing masks in school. That has been mandated by the state, by the governor. The governor has also mandated that all school employees should either be vaccinated or tested on a weekly basis. We've started to establish those protocols here in Elizabeth and at Elizabeth Public Schools. And, we're happy to say that our environment at this time is safe. But, the way that this pandemic has been working, you don't, and the mayor can agree to this in our conversations back in March and April. 1 week we could be on one schedule and moving in one direction, and then the next week it could totally change and we have to do something else. This pandemic has really been a challenging situation for the city, the mayor, the city council, the school board, the Madam Superintendent, the administration, and the schools. And the fact that we're constantly dealing with moving targets. We're dealing with different standards that come through. We're dealing with different regulations that we have to follow. So we're always trying to do what's best for our children here in Elizabeth. So again, I do also want to encourage that all children should wear their masks and hand wash it. And we saw that on the first day of school. We saw all of our children knowing that they had to keep their masks on, and because they were excited, they still knew what they had to do, because this is the times that we're living in now. I also myself became vaccinated very early because I realized that it was important. That was important. Myself and as an adult to be vaccinated at that time, not to be able to spread the disease to others, but also to be conscious of others. You know that for us to be vaccinated, we have to care about the next person of not trying to spread it to them and also trying to get them sick. Another thing, a great thing that we've been able to do, like the mayor had mentioned, we do have 2 UV air purifiers per class. But with the CARES Act and the American Rescue Funds that we received this year, we've been able to augment our energy savings improvement program, okay, with those funds. So we're spending a total of $74 million, okay, to improve the ventilation in all of our schools, okay? And as we know, many of our school buildings are older, and this money, let me tell you, was a blessing for us because of the fact that we have the opportunity to make all of these improvements over the next 2 years. I'm also happy that we're also able to include air conditioning for all of our schools to be implemented in the next 2 to 3 years. This was a major goal of this board to make sure that all of our children were able to learn in a comfortable and environment.
So, Jerry, you know, the debate goes on about masks, not here in Elizabeth, but around the country. And I went to schools in May when we reopened and greeted many of the children. I was at a couple of the schools in September, and every child was wearing a mask properly, every single one of them. I believe the parents have created more of an issue over masks than any of the kids. Most of these kids are fine with it. I'd say 99% of the kids are listening and they're doing extremely well with the mask. It's a shame that the parents don't recognize around the country, not here. I have to say the parents here have been, for the most part, extremely cooperative in the mask wearing, where they've taught their children how to wear the mask properly, because it tells us the masks prevent the spread of this virus.
You know, Mayor, I think, and I agree with you. Our parents have been absolutely wonderful when it comes to and instructing their children to wear the mask, and we thank God have not had to deal with the controversies that many other school boards have been dealing with recently. But when I look back and I remember when COVID first, we had a meeting right before our schools were shut down for COVID, and I think that was the reason why people in our community are more in tune on mask wearing, because of the fact when the pandemic first happened in March 2020, so many lives were lost, so many citizens, so many family members, so many people, unfortunately, lives were lost during COVID. And I think that had a lasting impact on our community, because we all know someone who, if not themselves, were directly affected by COVID. So I think having that knowledge and us living it firsthand, because many other parts of the country did not experience what people in our region did in the New York greater metro area experience in those first days of COVID, and the things that were going on. And I think that had the impact that was needed. You also referenced the fact that Elizabeth residents are approximately 84% vaccinated, which is a great thing because I think the national average is now still at 75. That just shows how everyone in our community does care for each other, and we are all concerned about being safe.
So, Jerry, switching gears a little bit, tell us about, it's been a tough year. Tell us about a favorite moment you've had as president of the school board.
I guess I'm going to tell you, one of my favorite moments was that first day of school. That first day of school, going back, seeing all of our kids happy. And the thing of it is, it's not even the kids. The teachers were happy, Mayor. Okay, the staff was happy. Everybody was happy because of the fact that we were able to get back to normal. Okay, and I think that was so important. That virtual learning is virtual learning. That was something that we had to do at that time. But we all know what school is really about. School also is more importantly about the social connection, the emotional connection that we all share as human beings here on this earth. And being able to do that through the computer is not always as helpful as when you're able to do that in person. So I had to say, one of my favorite moments was seeing this, and you can't see the smiles because everyone had their mask on, but you could feel the energy and excitement for my kids because of the fact that they were finally back in school this year. Finally.
Jerry, I want to thank you for your leadership at the school board during a very, very difficult year, as well as your continuing service on the Board of Education, and also for taking the time to join us on the show and tell our viewers exactly what's going on regarding COVID and Hurricane Ida at the school. Thank you very much, Jerry.
Thank you, Mayor.
This is Mayor Chris Bollwage. We'll see you next week on another edition of Our City.
Cut.